Case File 03, The Door in the Castle Wall. The letter arrived 2 days after the incident beneath the city. It was not delivered by post. Clara found it resting on the front counter when she opened the shop that morning, placed neatly between 2 stacks of books that had not been disturbed the night before. No envelope, no stamp, just a folded sheet of thick paper, sealed with a small pressed emblem. She stared at it for a moment before picking it up. Elias? He appeared at the top of the stairs, already halfway into his day. Yes? This wasn't here yesterday. That is rarely a reason to ignore it. She gave him a look, then broke the seal. The paper inside was heavier than expected. The handwriting was precise, formal, almost architectural in its structure. She read it once silently, then again, slower. What is it? Elias asked. Clara looked up. It's from a restoration architect. Elias came down the stairs. Go on. She handed him the letter. Dr. Ward, I have been advised, through indirect and somewhat unusual channels, that you may be able to assist with a matter that does not appear in any official record. I am currently overseeing structural restoration at an estate outside London, comparable in age and complexity to Windsor Castle. During recent work, we uncovered a door embedded within an interior wall that does not correspond to any known plans of the structure. The door appears significantly older than the surrounding stone. It should not exist. I request your discretion and, if possible, your immediate presence. Jonathan Hale. Elias folded the letter once thoughtfully. Interesting, he said. Clara crossed her arms. That's all? A door where there should not be one, he continued. Older than the structure around it. She tilted her head. Like the tunnel. Yes. And the restaurant? He looked at her. Possibly. Clara exhaled. We're leaving the city now. For this case, yes. She allowed herself a small smile. Good. The estate stood several hours outside the city. As they approached, the modern world seemed to fall away gradually, replaced by open land, quiet roads, and the slow rise of older structures that had no interest in keeping pace with time. The castle appeared through the morning mist like something half-remembered. Tall, stone, unmoved by centuries. Clara stepped out of the car and looked up. It was exactly the kind of place she had seen in her thoughts before she ever understood why. I know this feeling, she said quietly. Elias glanced at her. Do you? She nodded slowly. Not the place, just the feeling of it. That is often enough. They were met at the entrance by a man in his early 40s, dressed neatly but carrying the tension of someone whose work had moved beyond the expected. Dr. Ward, he said, extending a hand. Jonathan Hale. Elias shook it. This is Clara Finch. Jonathan nodded politely, though his attention quickly returned to Elias. I appreciate you coming. I'm aware this is unusual. So far, Elias said, it is consistent. Jonathan hesitated. With what, exactly? Other things that should not exist. That did not reassure him. The interior of the castle was colder than the air outside. Stone corridors stretched in multiple directions, lit by a mix of modern fixtures and older preserved elements that cast long shadows across uneven floors. Clara ran her hand lightly along one of the walls as they walked. You can feel it, she said. Jonathan glanced back. Feel what? The age, she said simply. He gave a small, uncertain nod. Yes, it does have that effect on people. Elias said nothing. The door was located in a narrow service corridor, the kind of passage that once connected the main halls to kitchens and storage rooms, now rarely used except during maintenance work. Jonathan stopped a few feet away from it. There. Clara saw it immediately. It was easy to miss at first glance, smaller than expected, set into the stone as though it had always been there. And yet, it didn't belong. The surrounding wall was solid, uniform in its construction. But the door! The wood was darker. Older. The iron hinges worn in a way that suggested use long before the wall itself had been built around it. Clara stepped closer. "It feels like it was placed here first," she said. Elias nodded. "And the wall was built later?" Jonathan let out a breath. "That's exactly what I thought." Elias examined the surface carefully. Then his expression shifted. "The markings?" he said. Clara leaned in. Faint carvings traced the edges of the wood. Almost invisible unless you knew to look. "What are they?" she asked. Elias did not look away from the door. "The same kind of symbols we saw beneath the city." Clara felt a quiet drop in her stomach. "Another seal?" "Possibly." Jonathan looked between them. "I'm sorry. Seal." Elias stepped back slightly. "Tell me," he said. "Have you opened it?" Jonathan hesitated. "Once." "And?" Jonathan swallowed. "It shouldn't be possible." Clara's voice softened. "What did you see?" Jonathan looked at the door, then back at them. "It wasn't just a staircase." Jonathan did not move closer to the door. He stayed where he was, as though an invisible line had been drawn across the floor. "It wasn't just a staircase," he repeated. "It went down, yes, but farther than it should have. The dimensions don't make sense for this part of the structure." Elias's attention sharpened. "How far did you descend?" "Not far enough," Jonathan said quickly. "I didn't stay." Clara watched him carefully. "What stopped you?" Jonathan hesitated. Then, "The air changed." Elias and Clara exchanged a brief glance. "How?" Elias asked. Jonathan struggled for the words. "Like stepping into a different time," he said. "The temperature dropped, the light felt wrong, and there was a smell." "What kind of smell?" "Smoke," he said. "Old smoke, not fresh. Like something that burned a long time ago and never left." Clara felt something tighten in her chest. The restaurant, the fire. Elias stepped forward. "We should see it." Jonathan did not argue, but he did not follow immediately either. Elias placed his hand against the door. The wood was cold, not surface cold. Deep cold. No, like something that had not been touched in a very long time. "Clara," he said quietly. She stepped beside him. "I'm here." He nodded once, then slowly. He pushed the door open. It gave with a low, resistant sound. Not locked, just unused. Beyond it, a narrow staircase spiraled downward, stone, worn, older than anything they had passed to reach it. Clara stepped forward, peering into the descent. "It shouldn't fit," she said. The angle was wrong. The depth felt wrong. The space seemed to stretch further than the structure above could possibly allow. Elias did not respond. He was already stepping inside. Clara followed. Behind them, Jonathan remained at the threshold. "I'll stay here," he said. Elias did not object. The staircase curved tightly, forcing them to move slowly. Their footsteps echoed in a way that felt heavier than it should have. Not hollow, not empty, absorbed, like the space was listening. Clara kept one hand against the wall as they descended. The stone was uneven, rough, and colder the deeper they went. After several turns, she realized something. "We've gone too far." Elias did not stop. "Yes. This is deeper than the foundation." "Yes," Clara swallowed. "Then where are we?" Elias answered without turning. "Not entirely in the same place we began." That answer settled uneasily in her mind. At last, the staircase opened into a long chamber. Clara stepped off the final stair and froze. It was a hall. Not large, but wide enough to hold purpose. Rows of wooden tables stretched across the room. Long, narrow, arranged as though waiting for guests. Dust lay across every surface, thick and undisturbed. And yet, it did not feel abandoned. It felt paused, like something had stopped mid-moment and never resumed. Clara moved forward slowly. "This is a dining hall." Elias nodded once. "Yes." Her voice dropped. like the dream. Elias did not respond, but she knew he had made the same connection. At the far end of the chamber stood another door, larger than the one they had entered through, older, and unlike the first. It was slightly open. Clara felt it immediately. That same pull, stronger this time, not just curiosity, a recognition. She stepped toward it. "Clara," Elias said, but not sharply, not stopping her, just acknowledging. She reached the door and placed her hand against it. The wood was warmer than it should have been, alive with something faint but present. Slowly. She pushed it open. Light spilled through. Not electric, not modern. Firelight, golden, flickering. Clara's breath caught. Beyond the doorway was another room, but not the same room and not the same time. The hall was alive. Torches burned along the walls. The long tables were filled with people. Voices echoed, laughter, conversation, the clink of metal against glass. A feast, exactly as described, exactly as dreamed. Clara stood at the threshold, unable to move. It wasn't distant. It wasn't a vision. It was happening, just beyond the door. She could smell it now, food, smoke, heat, life. For a moment she forgot everything else. Forgot the staircase. Forgot the tunnel. Forgot even Elias behind her. There was only the room, the warmth, the sense that she could step forward and belong there. Then, one of the figures turned. Not fully, just slightly. But enough. Enough that Clara felt something shift. Not recognition. Not exactly, but awareness. As if the moment itself had noticed her. The air tightened. The sound faltered. Just for a second. Elias's voice came low behind her. "Clara, close the door." She didn't move. Not yet. The pull was stronger now. If she stepped forward, just one step, she could be inside it. Inside the moment. Inside the memory. Clara. This time sharper. She blinked. The illusion broke. Just enough. She pulled the door shut. The chamber returned to silence. Dust, stillness, cold. As if nothing had ever been there, Clara stepped back, her pulse unsteady. That was real. Elias stood beside her now. Yes, not a dream. No. She looked at him. What was that? Elias studied the door, then the room, then the space around them. A preserved moment, he said quietly, like the restaurant. Yes, but this one. She struggled for the words. It was stronger. Elias nodded. Yes. Clara glanced back at the door. And it knew I was there. Elias did not answer immediately. That silence was answer enough. The chamber trembled slightly, subtle, but unmistakable. Clara's breath caught. Not again! Elias turned toward the staircase. We need to go. They moved quickly now. Up the spiral, stone underfoot shifting in that same barely perceptible way, the air thinning, the sense of alignment slipping. Clara did not look back this time. She didn't want to see the door again, didn't want to risk it opening on its own. They reached the top, stepped through, and Elias pulled the door shut behind them. The corridor outside felt brighter, warmer, normal. Jonathan stepped forward immediately. What happened? Clara looked at him, then at Elias. Elias answered. You should not open this door again. Jonathan's face paled slightly. That bad? Elias held his gaze. Yes. That night, back at the bookshop, Clara sat with the journal open in front of her. Her hand moved slower this time, more carefully. Case file 03, the door in the castle wall. She paused before finishing, then added a final line beneath the entry. Some moments are not lost. They are waiting for someone to open the door. Upstairs, Elias stood at the window overlooking the quiet street. His reflection stared back at him in the glass. Behind it, the city stretched outward, layered and silent. Beneath it, something older remained. And for the first time, he considered a possibility he had not yet allowed himself to fully accept. These were not just echoes, not just memories, they were connected, and whatever linked them had not yet revealed its full shape. Case File 04. The Man in the Clock Tower. The report did not arrive by letter. It came by photograph. Clara found it slipped halfway beneath the shop door just after dusk, the edge of the paper damp from the evening mist that had begun settling over London. She picked it up carefully and closed the door behind her. "Elias?" he answered from upstairs. "Yes?" "You might want to see this." A few minutes later they stood at the desk under lamplight. Clara placed the photograph down between them. Elias leaned in. For a moment he said nothing. Clara watched his expression. It didn't change much, but she could tell. This was not ordinary. The image had been taken from street level, looking up, at a clock tower. The face of the clock glowed softly against the darkening sky, its glass lit from within by a dull golden light. But that wasn't what drew the eye. Inside the clock face, there was a figure, a man, standing among the gears. Clara crossed her arms slowly. "That's not reflection, is it?" "No," Elias said. "Editing?" "No." She exhaled. "Then someone is inside that tower." Elias straightened slightly. "Someone who should not be." They found the sender the following evening. A security guard named Thomas Keane, stationed at a municipal building not far from one of the older towers in the city, the kind that still stood as a reminder of another era, much like Big Ben, though smaller and less visited. He met them outside the building just before nightfall. "I didn't think anyone would take it seriously," he said, glancing between them. "You'd be surprised what we take seriously," Clara replied. He gave a nervous half-smile. "Yeah, well, I've seen it more than once now." Elias's attention sharpened. "How many times?" "3, Thomas said. "Always the same, right before midnight. And the tower is sealed? Locked tight. Maintenance hasn't been up there in years. No reason to." Clara looked up at the structure. It rose above them, dark stone against a fading sky, the clock face already beginning to glow as the light dimmed around it. "Show us," she said. They waited across the street. Time passed slowly. The city moved around them. Cars, footsteps, distant voices. But the tower remained still, silent, unchanged. Clara checked her watch. 11:57 p.m. Thomas shifted beside them. "It'll happen soon." Elias said nothing. His eyes remained fixed on the clock. 11:59. The air felt different. Not colder, not warmer, just focused. Clara felt it again. That same subtle pressure she had felt in the tunnel, in the castle. A moment aligning. Then she saw it. At first, just a shadow. Faint, indistinct, then clearer. A figure standing behind the glass. Still, watching. Clara's breath caught. "He's there." Thomas nodded quickly. "I told you." The figure did not move much. Just enough to confirm it was real. A man. Standing among the massive inner workings of the clock. His outline was sharp against the light behind him. Not transparent and not ghost-like. Present. "Does he ever leave?" Clara whispered. Thomas shook his head. "Not that I've seen." Elias stepped slightly closer to the curb, eyes narrowing. "He is not moving randomly," he said. Clara followed his gaze. The man shifted slightly. Not walking, not wandering. Positioning, as if aware of something. Or waiting for something. The second hand reached the top of the clock. Midnight. The bell struck. 1. A deep, resonant sound that rolled through the street. The figure moved, just slightly. Turning. Not toward the city, but toward them. Clara felt it immediately. Not recognition. Not exactly, but awareness. The same feeling she had at the castle door. The same moment where something inside the memory noticed her. 2. 3. The bells continued. The sound filled the air, heavy, ancient, unavoidable. The figure stepped once, not forward, and not backward. Just enough to shift position among the gears. Clara's eyes followed the movement, and that's when she saw it. He's not just standing there. Elias didn't look away. No. He's working. The gears turned slowly around him. Massive, precise, and the man moved with them, not trapped, not wandering, maintaining, adjusting, as if continuing a task long after it should have ended. The final bell struck. 12. The sound faded, and with it, the figure vanished. Gone. No blur and no fade, just absence. The clock face returned to stillness. Only glass, only light, only time. Clara let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. That's not an echo. Elias's voice was quiet. No. Thomas looked between them. Then what is it? Elias didn't answer immediately. Instead, he looked up at the tower again. Longer this time, more carefully. Someone who never left, he said at last. Later, inside the building, they were allowed access to the lower levels of the tower. The door leading upward remained locked. Sealed, dust lined the edges of the hinges. Undisturbed. Clara ran her fingers lightly along it. No one's been through here. No, Elias said, but something remains. Back at the shop, Clara wrote the entry in silence. Case file 04, the man in the clock tower. She paused at the end, then added, Some people are not trapped in time. They are part of its movement. Upstairs, Elias stood again at the window. The city stretched outward beneath the night, lights flickering, time moving forward, always forward, and yet, not entirely. Case file 05, the lady in the garden. The letter arrived in the afternoon. Unlike the others, it came by proper post. Stamped, addressed, expected. Clara almost overlooked it. It sat among ordinary correspondence, book inquiries, restoration requests, notices that belonged to the normal world. For a moment she considered setting it aside. Then she noticed the handwriting, careful, deliberate, and something about it felt heavy. Elias, she called. He appeared at the top of the stairs. Yes? She held up the envelope. This one feels different. That was all it took. Open it. She did, Dr. Ward. I have recently taken position as caretaker of an estate outside London, long closed to the public, and only now reopened in limited capacity. Several guests have reported seeing a woman walking the garden grounds at night. She does not respond when spoken to. She does not enter the house. She walks the same path each evening, from the rose garden to the lake. I do not believe this is imagination. I would prefer it to be. Margaret Ellison. Clara lowered the letter slowly. That's not like the others. No, Elias said. It is not. This one doesn't sound confused. No, she looked at him. She sounds certain. Elias nodded once. Yes. The estate stood quiet when they arrived. Not abandoned, but still, like something waiting to be acknowledged. The house itself rose behind iron gates and long winding paths, its stones softened by ivy and time. The windows reflected the sky, pale and distant, giving nothing away. Clara stepped out slowly. The air felt different here. Not heavy like the tunnels, not sharp like the castle, soft, but weighted with something she couldn't name. I know this feeling, she said quietly. Elias glanced at her. Yes, she looked at him. You feel it too. I do. Margaret Ellison met them at the front entrance. She was older, composed, but there was something unsettled beneath the surface of her posture. You came quickly, she said. You sounded certain, Elias replied. Margaret gave a small, humourless smile. I am. They walked the grounds before sunset. The garden stretched wide behind the estate, carefully maintained but not overly restored. Roses climbed along low stone walls, and narrow paths curved through hedges towards a small lake at the far edge of the property. Clara followed one of the paths slowly. "She walks here?" she asked. "Every night," Margaret said. "Same time, same direction." "Always alone?" "Yes." "And she never speaks?" Margaret shook her head. "Never." Clara looked toward the lake. The water was still, perfectly still, like glass. "Does she ever reach it?" Clara asked. Margaret hesitated. "Yes." "And then?" "She disappears." They waited until nightfall. No one suggested going inside. The house felt less important than the garden, less involved. Clara stood near the edge of the rose path, watching as the sky dimmed into deep blue and the first shadows settled across the grounds. Elias stood a few steps behind her. Margaret remained near the house. No one spoke. Then, movement. Clara saw it first. A figure emerging slowly from the far end of the garden, pale, soft, unmistakable. A woman. She walked without hesitation, not drifting, not searching, following. The same path Margaret had described. Rose Garden, then toward the lake. Clara felt something tighten in her chest. Not fear, not exactly recognition, not of the woman, but of the feeling, the quiet repetition, the certainty. "She doesn't look lost," Clara whispered. "No," Elias said. "She looks like she knows exactly where she's going." "Yes." The woman passed closer now. Clara could see her clearly. Her dress was old, simple, pale, untouched by time in a way that felt wrong. Her face was calm, not sorrowful, not afraid, just fixed, as if she had settled into a single moment and never left it. Clara stepped forward slightly. "Wait!" Elias's hand caught her wrist, not forcefully, just enough. "Do not interrupt it." Clara stopped. "Why?" "Because this is not an interaction," he said quietly. "It is a repetition." The woman continued walking. Unaware or unconcerned, she reached the edge of the lake. Stopped. And for the first time, she hesitated. Clara leaned forward. "She's waiting." Elias said nothing. The woman turned slightly. Not fully. Just enough. Her gaze moved toward the house, toward them. For a moment, Clara felt it, that same awareness, that same subtle shift. The moment recognizing it was being seen. Then, the woman turned back and stepped forward, into the lake. She did not struggle, did not sink violently. She simply faded, as if the water accepted her, as if she had done this before many times. The surface stilled, nothing remained. Clara stood frozen. "That's not a haunting." Elias's voice was quiet. "No." "What is it then?" He looked toward the water. A moment that never completed. Later, inside the estate, Margaret sat across from them, hands folded tightly. "Well?" she asked. Clara looked at Elias, then back at Margaret. "She's not trapped," Clara said. Margaret frowned. "Then why is she still here?" Clara hesitated, then answered softly, "She's waiting." That night back at the shop, Clara wrote slowly, more carefully than before. "Case file 05, the lady in the garden." She paused at the end, longer this time, then wrote, "Not all ghosts remain because they cannot leave. Some remain because they are still waiting." Upstairs, Elias stood in silence. The city stretched beyond the window, alive, moving, forgetting. But not everywhere, not completely. Case file 06, the map that changes. The package arrived without a sound. No knock, no bell, no sign of delivery. It was simply there. Clara found it on the desk when she returned upstairs that evening. A small rectangular parcel wrapped in aged brown paper, tied with thin twine that looked more brittle than secure. She stopped. It hadn't been there minutes ago. She was certain of it. "Elias." He didn't answer immediately. He was near the shelves again, as he often was now, moving between old records and newer notes, building something quietly in his mind. "There's something here." That was enough. He turned. They stood over the package together. Clara didn't touch it at first. It wasn't fear, just awareness. "This wasn't delivered," she said. "No," Elias replied. "You're not surprised?" "No." She looked at him. "Should I be?" "Not anymore." She untied the twine. The paper came away easily, revealing a flat wooden case beneath. Old, worn smooth along the edges. No markings, no label. Clara lifted the lid. Inside, a folded map. Elias didn't move. Clara carefully removed it and placed it on the desk. The paper crackled softly as she unfolded it. It was older than anything they had handled recently. Not fragile, but preserved, as if it had been kept deliberately safe. "It's London," she said. "Yes." The map showed the city in an earlier form. Narrower streets, different names, older boundaries, sections of the city that no longer existed, or existed differently now. Clara leaned closer. "There are no labels here," she said, pointing to several blank areas. "Not yet," Elias said. She glanced at him. "What does that mean?" He didn't answer. That night, Clara stayed later than usual. The map remained open on the desk. Elias had said very little after examining it, only, "Watch it." At first, nothing happened. The room was quiet. The city beyond the window dimmed into night. Clara turned a page in her notebook. Then, she paused. A mark had appeared. She leaned forward slowly. A small circle, dark ink, fresh. It had not been there before, and she was certain of it. "Elias!" He was already standing behind her. He hadn't made a sound. He was just there. "Where?" he asked. She pointed. He studied it, then reached for one of the modern maps stacked nearby. He overlaid it carefully, lined the streets, adjusted the angle. Clara watched his expression change, subtly, but unmistakably. "What is it?" Elias tapped the location. "This is where the restaurant appeared." Silence filled the room. Clara looked back at the map. "It's tracking them." "Yes." The next mark appeared the following day, and then another, each one forming slowly, deliberately, as if written by something unseen. Clara began recording them. Time, location, order. She traced them onto a second sheet. Connected them. "That's not random," she said. "No." Lines began to form. A shape. Large. Spanning across the city. Touching each location they had encountered. The restaurant. The tunnel. The castle. The clock tower. The garden. Clara stepped back. "It's a pattern." Elias said nothing. He was already studying it from a different angle. A deeper one. "It's a seal," he said finally. Clara turned sharply. "A what?" "A containment pattern." She frowned. "For what?" Elias didn't answer right away. He traced the lines again, more carefully this time. "These points," he said, "they are not just locations." "What are they?" "They are pressure points." Clara felt it then. That shift. That same quiet understanding that had been building across every case. "The events," she said slowly. "The restaurant. The tunnel. The castle. They're not random." Elias looked at her. "No, they're releases." The word settled heavily in the room. Clara stepped closer to the map again. Her voice lowered. "Releases of what?" Elias's gaze moved to the center of the pattern. There. A faint mark had begun to form, not fully visible, not yet complete, but undeniable. "The question," he said quietly, "is not what is being released." Clara followed his gaze, to the center, to the place everything pointed toward. But what is being contained? The mark darkened slightly. Neither of them touched the map. That night, Clara wrote the entry slower than any before. Case file 06, the map that changes. Her hand paused at the end. Then she wrote, "Maps do not always show where you are. Sometimes they show what is trying to emerge." Upstairs, Elias remained awake long after the lamps had dimmed. The map lay open, unmoving, but not finished. Somewhere beneath London, something waited. Not newly discovered, not recently placed, but old. And now, it was being marked. Case File 07. The Room That Moves. The request did not come with urgency. That, more than anything, made Clara uneasy. It arrived as a simple note, delivered by hand during the late afternoon, a time when the shop was open, the street outside active, and everything appeared ordinary. The man who brought it did not stay. He placed the envelope on the counter, nodded once, and left without waiting for a response. Clara watched him go, then looked down at the envelope. No return address, no mark. Just a name written neatly across the front, Dr. Elias Ward. She opened it immediately. Dr. Ward, I manage a hotel in central London. We have encountered an irregularity that does not appear in our records and cannot be explained by staff. Several guests have reported staying in a room that does not exist on any floor plan. The room is described consistently. When staff attempt to locate it, it cannot be found. We have verified all room numbers. There is no error. I would appreciate your discretion in this matter. Arthur Bell, manager. Clara read it twice, then a third time. When Elias came downstairs, she handed it to him without a word. He read it once, folded it. Interesting, he said. Clara narrowed her eyes slightly. You always say that. Only when it is. The hotel stood in a quieter part of the city, its exterior elegant but unremarkable. One of many older buildings that had been modernized just enough to remain in use without losing its original structure. Inside, however, the atmosphere shifted. Not dramatically, subtly, enough that Clara noticed it immediately. It feels layered, she said. Elias glanced at her. Yes. Arthur Bell met them in the lobby. He was composed, professional, but there was strain beneath his posture, the kind that comes from managing something that should not exist within a system built on order. Thank you for coming, he said. You said the descriptions were consistent, Elias replied. Yes. Arthur gestured for them to follow. As far as we can determine, the room appears selectively. Clara frowned. What does that mean? It means, Arthur said carefully, that guests encounter it, but staff do not. They moved through the corridors slowly. Everything appeared normal. Numbered doors, clean lines, predictable structure, nothing out of place. Arthur stopped at the end of a hallway. This is where it was last reported. Clara looked around. There was nothing unusual, just a wall, 2 doors, a small decorative table with a vase. That's it? She asked. Yes. And the room? Arthur gave a tight smile. Does not exist. Elias stepped forward. He didn't touch anything, didn't move anything. He simply stood in the space, observing. Clara watched him, then looked again, and this time, she felt it, a shift, not visible, not audible, but real. Elias. He nodded slightly. I feel it. The hallway seemed to stretch, not physically, but perceptually, like something had slipped slightly out of alignment. And then it appeared, between the 2 doors, where there had only been wall. A third door. Clara's breath caught. That wasn't there. No, Elias said quietly, it was not. The door looked normal. Wood. Polished. A small brass number fixed at eye level, but the number itself was worn, older than the rest. Arthur stepped back instinctively. I've never seen it appear. Clara moved closer. The handle was slightly tarnished, not neglected, just not part of the current space. Do we open it? She asked. Elias answered immediately. Yes. Clara turned the handle. The door opened without resistance. Inside, warmth. Not the artificial warmth of heating. Real warmth. The room was softly lit. Golden light. Heavy curtains. Dark wood furniture. A bed neatly made with linens that looked older in style. A small table near the window. And on it, a book. Clara stepped inside slowly. It feels real. Elias followed. Yes. Arthur remained at the threshold. I don't think I should. Then don't, Elias said. Clara moved further into the room. Everything felt intact, lived in, but not currently occupied. She approached the table. The book was open. A guest book. Her fingers hovered over the page, then turned it. Names, dozens of them, written in different styles, different inks, different time periods. Clara's voice lowered. These go back years. Elias stepped beside her. Further than years. She flipped another page and stopped. A name. Written in fresh ink, she read it aloud. Daniel Harrow. Silence. Clara looked at Elias. That's... Yes. The man from the restaurant. Clara's pulse quickened. This room, it connects them. Elias didn't answer. He was looking at the walls, at the structure, at something deeper. This room is not fixed, he said. What do you mean? It does not belong to one location. Clara looked around again, then back at the door. A thought hit her. Elias? He already knew. They stepped out and turned back. The door was gone. Only a wall. Arthur stared. That's impossible. Clara shook her head slowly. No. She looked at Elias. It's moving. Back at the shop, Clara wrote with a steadier hand than she expected. Case file 07. The room that moves. She paused, then added, Some places are not lost. They are simply no longer fixed in one moment. Upstairs, Elias stood in silence again. The map lay open. Another mark had appeared. The pattern was growing, and now... It was no longer just places. It was movement. Case file 08. The bridge that whispers. The river carried sound differently at night. Clara noticed it the moment they stepped onto the bridge. The city behind them still moved. Distant traffic, muffled voices, the low hum of life continuing. But here, over the water, everything felt stretched, thinned, as if sound had farther to travel, and in doing so, changed. She paused near the stone railing, looking out across the dark surface of the Thames as it reflected scattered lights from the surrounding buildings of London. It's quieter here, she said. Elias stepped beside her. No, he replied. It only seems that way. She glanced at him. What's the difference? He rested his hand lightly against the cold stone. Quiet suggests absence, he said. This is not absence. Clara listened again, and this time, she understood. It wasn't quiet. It was full. Just distant. The report had come from a police officer who refused to put anything official in writing. He had visited the shop late the previous evening, staying near the door as if unsure how long he intended to remain. I don't want this filed, he had said. I just want to know if I'm losing it. Clara had leaned forward slightly. What did you hear? He hesitated. Then, someone called my name. Now, standing on the same bridge, Clara folded her arms slightly against the night air. This is where it happened. Elias nodded once. Yes. And he was alone? Yes. She looked out across the water again. What did he hear exactly? Elias didn't answer immediately. Instead, he tilted his head slightly, listening. Clara waited. At first, there was nothing. Then, a sound. Faint. So faint she almost dismissed it. A voice. She froze. Elias. I hear it. The voice was distant, not carried by wind, not echoing from the city, coming from the water. Clara stepped closer to the edge. It wasn't clear, not words, not yet, just tone, human. Then, another voice, lower, closer. She felt something shift in her chest. Not fear, recognition. They're not random, she whispered. No, Elias said. The voices began to overlap. Multiple, layered, some softer, some sharper, all incomplete. Clara strained to listen, and then, for just a moment, one became clear. Clara! She stepped back sharply. Her breath caught. Elias's hand closed gently around her arm. Do not respond. Her heart was racing. That was... Yes. Another voice followed. Different, male, unfamiliar, then another and another. The sounds were rising now, not louder. Clearer! Clara pressed her hand against the stone railing. They're calling people. Elias's voice remained steady. Yes. Why? He looked out over the water. The river carries memory, he said, more than most places. Clara frowned. Memory doesn't speak. No, he said, but moments do. She forced herself to listen again. The voices shifted, not repeating, not looping, different each time. Help me. Don't... Wait. No. Fragments. Not conversations. Endings. Clara's expression changed. These are last words. Elias nodded. Yes. The realization settled heavily. People who died here, she said. Or near it. Clara stepped back again. The bridge suddenly felt different, not empty, it is not silent, crowded. The voices continued, weaving in and out of clarity. None staying long enough to fully form, none repeating. Why now? She asked. Elias didn't look away from the water. The pattern is expanding. Clara thought of the map, the marks, the circle forming across the city. This is another point, she said. Yes. Another release. Elias nodded once. The voices began to fade, not abruptly, gradually, as if whatever had allowed them to surface was shifting again. Clara listened until the last one disappeared. Silence returned, but it no longer felt empty. She exhaled slowly. That's worse than seeing something. Elias glanced at her. Yes, because you can't look away. He didn't respond. They stood there a moment longer. The river moving quietly beneath them, the city continuing above it, unaware. Then Clara spoke again. Do you think they know? Know what? That they're repeating. Elias considered that. I don't think they are aware of us, he said, only of the moment they are in. Clara looked back toward the water. Then that's not a haunting. No. It's fragments? Yes. She nodded slowly. Fragments that didn't leave. Back at the shop, Clara wrote more carefully than usual. The voices lingered longer than the images ever had. Harder to separate, harder to place. Case file 08, the bridge that whispers. Her pen paused at the end, then moved again. Some voices are not meant to be heard again. But when they are, they do not speak to us. They speak from where they ended. Upstairs, Elias stood over the map. Another mark had appeared. The pattern was no longer forming. It was completing, and at its centre, something waited.